good because the
Okay.
video
The conference
is
call
never...
line can't record, so it can still be used as a recorder, and then we'll email that to you. I can email that to
I
you.
believe it's recording.
Oh.
Red. Numbers changing. All right.
And the video says insufficient space, so the video camera...
You gotta delete something off the camera.
Yeah.
I guess she's saying that the camera has insufficient space. Would that?
Yeah, apparently the
Yeah,
last meeting
that
is
means
done.
that you have to delete some of the videos off the camera because there's too many on there.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that, never done that, so I don't know that this is the time for me to learn either.
We may have to do that after you record it or something to make sure.
Oh,
It won't
record so they have the room.
I understand, but maybe when Michelle does it,
It's taking the sound though, but it's not taking the visual. It's taking the audio.
yeah.
But I don't think this is
We
the
already
time for me to
done?
learn. Yeah.
All right, we'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting of April 6th to order. The first item will be to review the minutes of March 16th. May we have a motion to approve the minutes, and then we'll discuss any issues with the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes?
Yes. On page 1, under Senior Center Building Expansion, it says RFQ/RFP on the third line, and it's RFQ.
Now, just to be clear, what are you saying there about the RFQ?
It's just RFQ. I said they're looking at doing an RFQ.
Not the RFP.
Right.
All right.
Okay, just RFQ.
Correct. Thank you. Then I think we got an email correction, is that right? From Steve Ross.
Yes, I saw that.
According to Steve,
Was he at the meeting?
no, he
No,
read
he
the
read the
minutes.
minutes.
Yeah. The discussion on I'm looking for it, so
But it was Swan Brook, I thought, wasn't
yes,
it? And that would be C.
Page 3.
I might,
yeah, page 3.
email, so I don't know what page it's on.
Okay,
It's
so
page 3, not
under
C.
Swan Brook outlet drainage issue. In the first sentence, it says at the end, property owned by the Hawks Nest Beach Club. According to Steve, it should be Hawks Nest Beach Club Association. It's a totally different group if you don't use the word association.
So we should add association.
And then in the last sentence, where it's abbreviated as HNBC, it should be HNBCA.
And he's correct, they're two totally different entities.
Okay.
Quite confusing.
And then I have a question. Going back up to our executive session, which would have been under 6. So where it starts, on page 3, I guess it would be A. Let's see. The start of that. But anyway, it says at 6:27 p.m. the executive session was concluded. No motions were made. Do we not have to indicate that there was a motion to come out of executive session?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was my question.
I mean, that's the way I understood it.
Okey-doke. That's all I got.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Then we're going to put under old business the whole COVID-19 response general category here. The governor sent out a communication this morning, and the laboratory confirmed cases are 5,675, and the hospitalizations are 1,142, and the deaths are 189. New London County, there are 57 reported cases, 10 hospitalizations, and 4 deaths. We have in Old Lyme 6 cases, one of which is a female who lives in Florida, goes to school in California, but lists her home address as Old Lyme. And for that reason, she is in our count, even though she is not physically in Connecticut, nor has been. So it's a quirk of the system that Ledgelight records her as being Old Lyme. Of the 6, including this person, of the 6 persons, half of them are under 30 years of age, and 5 out of the 6 are female. Just a statistic. I think as we move forward, one of the things we're going to be talking about are what do we do about some of our events that draw people. Number one, I think, is the beach activity. I got an email from Paul Erzell, who's the chairman of zoning. He lives near Kokomo's, and he reported that there were people on the beach congregating, and even one of the group came to his door looking for a corkscrew to undo a liter and a half bottle of wine. And they ultimately found one, not from him, and they were just not behaving the way they should. So later on, we'll be talking about the beach in general. But we have our parks, which we have previously said we don't want any groups or team sports occurring in the parks. Dom's monitoring such things as basketball games where you might have 3 or 4 people in close contact. So we have said we will be all right with people walking in our parks, but staying away from things like the jungle gyms, playgrounds, and doing other things that common sense would dictate they should not. I talked with Ian, the advisor at the school, about their posture, and he's okay with people walking around the track and around the grounds. They do have their security personnel available during the day, but I've heard observations that there are people playing ball out in the center of the track. So hopefully they're monitoring that. If things get out of hand, I'm sure all of us will have to lower the boom and just say all parks are closed. We realize that people are stuck in their houses, and we see a tremendous amount of foot traffic along Lime Street, which people are separating, and that seems fine. But we're going to have to deal with, as the weather gets warmer, we will attract more people, and that's why we're going to be talking specifically about the beach itself. Graduation is a question mark. I think the superintendent believes the school will likely not reopen before the end of the year, and so they'll be coming up with something to make graduation as halfway fun. I had a conversation with Tony Hendricks and Pauline Vallombroso, who are the chairs of the parade, talking about the Memorial Day parade, because while that's the end of May, it's close enough that we need to be thinking about a contingency plan. And I guess we will need to make a decision later in the month about what to do with that. Suggestions, it could be perhaps pushed back in time to perhaps possibly with Midsummer Festival, you might even envision a parade on the lower part of the street. We'd have to talk with the committee and see if that would work, because you'd have a lot of people in town, hopefully, if this is over by then. So that might be a possibility, or 4th of July, if it were cleared up by then, but we'll just have to see. So hopefully people will be sensible and avoid getting together. We had a complaint about a sign telling people they can't use Brighton Road, residents and beach club members only, which is not the case. It's a town street, so that sign was well-intentioned, I suppose, but it's being a bit presumptuous. So we will have to deal with situations as they arise, but I think as we look down the road, we can anticipate certain. After all, Memorial Day is one of our biggest events, and it would be a shame to have to cancel it, but it's not that far away, really, so it probably is in jeopardy at this point. I think people are generally doing the right thing. The food store is limiting customers to 50% of normal activity, and people are encouraged to use a face mask and gloves when going into the store. It's not so much to protect the individual as to protect others. And certainly the people, the workers in the store, deserve that courtesy. That's true any number of stores that are still open. So I think folks are doing a good job, but we just have to be vigilant, and if somebody brings something to our attention, we'll try to get it out to through the web and so forth. I don't know if you all have independent comments you'd like to make.
Tim, what are we doing about the employees that are coming into town hall routine?
There is a line item, there is an agenda item for that.
Oh, I see.
The staff is either working from home or in some cases they're here. I am here. Michelle Noran is here. The town clerk they rotate. They're here, and upstairs people are not here all day long. They kind of rotate. So I think the finance department is pretty much here. Don Bugby comes in and departs. So I think people are trying to keep their particular departments functioning, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But there's a good, reasonable presence. I think there's probably 7 or 8 cars in the parking lot at a high. So we do have. I know the building official comes in and then he's out doing his inspections. I think he's not going into houses per se, but he's trying to take care of his workload. So,
I think my question is more, the item below is about compensation. I'm thinking more about, is there opportunity for the folks that are coming in, if they find there are more people in, I guess particularly on the second floor, making it difficult for them to keep space. Is there opportunity? Is there training that they can do online from their home? Available to them?
We have the ability to call forward the extension for an employee's desk to their cell phone or home phone. So we have done that with most everyone from time to time. So they should be able to work remotely in that way. And as I say, I think given the home environment, we're encouraging people to work on projects that they didn't have time to work on before, to take that home and catch up on things. But yeah, there is the ability to call forward. So that's being done.
Okay. What about the executive order that requires renters not to have short-term rentals? Do you want to discuss that now, or somewhere else?
That's fairly new, and I see that as a big problem. And it's for how, just in case people don't know, it's Executive Order 7-T is in Tango, and it specifies that short-term rentals are to be prohibited, and the lodging is to be reserved for first responders and families and people who need to stay separated from their families so as not to possibly spread the virus to them. One can imagine that there are many units that are for rent, either single-family homes or cottages, and so maybe get that door. So the order is the order, and it didn't get into enforcement and all that, but I think it would be really difficult on some people who depend on that for their livelihood. So I don't know whether there was much discussion and by whom before it was issued, because in some cases there are reservations made long in advance, and while one can understand that people coming in could be infected, but we're talking a whole season could be booked, and to have to return the money and probably be empty. I'm not sure how many people would need to be housed, and there are, you have motels, and you have alternatives such as, I think some of the universities and colleges are offering their space, which is not being used. So it's something we'll have to deal with, obviously, but it's to enforce that to a T would be pretty disastrous for certain people.
So how do you want the Board of Selectmen to provide any thoughts or input on this?
Well, I think we need to understand more about it. I read it, and there's nothing about enforcement, and I think you can understand the rationale, but I don't know that it's been thought through in terms of the consequences. Now, if somebody who had a book of reservations could turn to the state or to the feds and everything be reimbursed, or their rentals be reimbursed, I think it needs more study. I don't think we can just make an edict here, because as I say, I don't know who's supposed to enforce it. There was nothing discussed in the ordinance that I saw that talked about, or the order that talked about that. So I think we need to get clarity from the governor's office as to, and I'm sure probably there are many others in the same boat, other towns and cities that have similar issues. So it didn't say that lost rents would be made up in any fashion. Maybe there would be, I don't know.
It just seems like the two issues we've talked about are really related. It'd be hard to close the beaches if you had people visiting from out of town as renters. It seems like the sooner we make a decision on this, the easier it will be. As painful as it will be a lot easier to not have people come and then close everything on them. I thought the order, I agree with you, I think the problem with the order is enforcement, and do these people get the Small Business Association loans and some of the other COVID-19 financing that's come out of the federal government or coming out of the federal government, I don't know, but it was pretty straightforward. And then, to me, if you're here now, you can finish your rental.
The words are clear. I think we need to understand what then happens. And if the beaches are closed, that doesn't mean that somebody who comes to a cottage they can be in the cottage and do other things, I suppose. And who knows when this may tail off. I mean, if you have a business booked into September, will everything still be shut down? If you return the money, probably you won't get that business back. We will have to do what is required, but it doesn't say how a town should implement it, or there's no conversation about how the landlords would make up that. That PPP program is for employee protection. It's nothing to do with lost revenues that I understand. It's to protect workers. So I think we really need to know more about it, and it would have a profound effect, I think.
So are you and your fellow first selectmen from the shoreline towns talking about this? Or
I haven't. It came out over the weekend, I think, so I have not heard any conversation. It would be something maybe our Council of Governments could find out. I think we need our state senator or state rep to find out more about it. It was very brief, and it did not go into the detail that we need. And as I say, it's very easy to say these properties cannot be rented, but
Well, it's going to have a huge trickle-down effect.
Huh?
It's going to have a huge trickle-down effect, just not with just the rentals. I mean, okay, so they're not going to be able to rent. I mean, if we close down the beaches, I mean, then you got item 4A, the Sound U truck, that we might as well just cancel, right now, and that's not going to happen because people can't be out. They're not going to go. If people can't go to Hallmarks or anything like that, why were you going to go to a vendor truck? So
Right.
I guess you are right. They've got to expand on this, say exactly what's going to happen. This is just not as easy as just saying no rentals less than 30 days. I don't know. They've got to.
Well, I think I'm just guessing because I don't know, but as you all know, we've been all getting cards and letters from people seeing license plates from other places in town.
Right.
And other towns have had the same thing. my thought was this order came out after all of those concerns. The one way to eliminate visitors is to eliminate the possibility of visitors having a place to stay here.
Yeah. Well, I think we got to, I mean, it's a big part. Let's face it, our beach area is our industry. And I think we have to look out for their interests and find out more about this and understand, okay, if you say it's going to be for first responders and that sort of thing, will they pay the rent that these cottages charge? Because they're pretty pricey. And I don't know whether a first responder would be subsidized in some fashion to pay these fancy rents.
Well, I don't think that's up to us who's going to pay. I don't think that's up to us as who's going to pay or how it's going to pay.
No, the practicality is if the intent is to make the housing available for people who need to separate from their families to protect the family.
Or is it being to protect the townspeople by not having out of town or out of state?
Well, the stated purpose is to provide housing for people that need to be separate from their families because they're first responders or whatever.
Right, I understand that, but I think
It's not
also an underlying
Yeah, I
reason.
think they're two different things, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I know for the housing for first responders that were exposed or may be exposed, the order said that they would be reimbursed $75 per night. I believe that's what the order said, but I think that's different than the order for eliminating basically the summer rental season.
Yeah, I think it needs more clarity, and if at the end of the day they say, too bad, we don't care, all short-term rentals have to be canceled and the deposit sent back, then I think we've got a serious problem on our hands, and I would like to understand, okay, so if the intent is to provide housing for a set of people, if those prices are as they are in the summer, is there a mechanism so these owners will get that money back or a good chunk of it back? If they say we'll pay you $75 a night, when it could be preposterously low. So I think we have to look out for the interests of our citizens and taxpayers who have these properties and see what they have in mind. The executive order is pretty silent on a number of very important variables.
Well, I guess my concern is also the people that live here and are concerned when they see folks visiting for a short term and possibly coming, potentially being asymptomatic carriers. They're equally important in our decision. And I think if we don't make a decision on this fairly soon, it may be too late because the beaches will be too crowded. I don't know how you force telling people no more.
Well, the beach is a very different topic, I think.
If they're renting homes down at the beach, they don't want to stay in a one-room, two-room cottage. They want to go outside. And the order is clear on five people or less.
Yeah, but I think we do not want to have, on a good hot day, 1,000 people driving to Oline to park and go on the beach. That's very different than renting a house from someone for 2 weeks or whatever the period might be. And it's very consequential. I think it would be very ill-advised just to say, okay, the order says this, we're going to implement it. because we don't know who's supposed to enforce it. We don't know if you're going to go and talk to an owner and say, you cannot rent it short term, and here's the recourse, here's where you maybe get money back from some source. I have no idea.
Well, the way I read it, we don't have any choice in the matter. It's coming down from the state. They're telling us this is what it is. You know, bypass is a line.
Okay, so who's going to enforce it?
I don't know.
Well, we ought to know. I don't think we just say
mystery of how it's going to happen.
If we make a vote and say all this stuff is canceled and we don't know the answers, I think that's bad news. We can deal with it at our next meeting maybe when we get a little more information, but...
Well, I think that would be a good thing. Maybe we can talk to see what the council of governments are doing. Because this is happening in Westbrook, this is happening in Sabre, and they brought Longhorn, and it's happening in other beach communities. So we got to figure out what's going on. Because, like you said, I mean, you can't have our police force go door to door. How are they going to know?
Well,
I mean, just on my street alone, we have 3 out-of-state families, and they're here. And they own the house. I mean, there's nothing, they have every right to be there. It's their house.
Yeah.
And like when I talked to Steve Mansfield a couple weeks ago, I think you were on the phone call also, Mary Jo, with Dave, one of the Friday nights, I asked, we were talking about all the influx of out-of-state people in the town, and the Big Y was all full, and people were blowing up my phone, probably blowing up one of your guys' phones too.
Yeah.
And I said, the town can't shut down. It's a governor's thing. So here's the governor saying what to do. But
we have been...
How do you follow through is the question.
We've been advised by the health district of 6-foot separation and, certain standards of washing hands and all that, and supposed to do a 2-week quarantine. So if that's the threshold, then who's to say that if they comply with that, you can ban them from coming to town, if they're complying with what... Now, there will be those who will not comply. And so I'm not sure if somebody is known to have occupied a house and they're seen driving to the food store, that, what do you send the police after them because they're breaking their quarantine?
They gotta go eat. No, I understand, and that's why I think we've got to find more answers to this.
Yeah.
We're not going to have an answer tonight.
No, I don't believe we will. And I think we could probably have...
It wasn't on the agenda. We needed to talk about it.
Well, we are talking about it.
I know.
And we could have, a sheet that if somebody reports someone living in a house and not complying with, if they're looking out the window and they see them out and about and not doing what they should be, perhaps between the police or some health people or whomever, we could figure out, we could give them a piece of paper and say, you've been observed not abiding by the 2-week quarantine, and please, this is a sheet of paper that explains it in detail, please comply. And then I think we have to know what next if they fail to comply. What do we do next? I think all these rules give us some ideas, but they don't tell us who ultimately has to enforce and what are the penalties. I don't know. So we want to keep our townspeople safe, and I think on the other side of the coin, the people who own houses have a right to come here. They still have to comply with the quarantine. I don't know if that means they cannot even go to the grocery store. They have to stay in the house and conscript somebody else to go shopping for them. Technically, these are unknowns, so we need to flesh it out, because in the end, we're the locals and we've got people, we receive a phone call and we have to act. So we will endeavor to do that.
Okay, that's why I brought it up, and I want to know what we as a Board of Selectmen are going to do. So as I understand it, you're going to reach out to the River Cog and your fellow First Selectmen. And we've already got an email from our attorney to flesh it out, and then what?
Oh, we gotta see how we enforce this.
Yeah, that's key.
So get some enforcement advice from the state and talk to maybe the resident state trooper, get some ideas there.
Yeah, we'll try to get some answers here, because in the end, people will be informing us of what they believe to be violations. So
Yeah.
we need to be prepared for that.
Well, I just got one today. I've been getting them regularly, but I got another one today. And at least I was able to say to this person that, because they referenced the order, that this particular place, based on the order, can complete the renter cycle that they already have going on. Because per the order, if they're in there now, they can stay.
All right, well, I think we need more info. We'll endeavor to get that. And if it's an absolute and we don't get help, then we'll have to figure out what to do. But
Well, maybe in the meantime, this week you can reach out to River Cog and see what else is going on. Just find out how they're dealing with it, or if they're dealing with it.
Yeah, I'm sure other communities have the same problem that are along the shore. So
everybody is.
Yeah,
and it's all new territory. So
all right. Next up, under the projects, the Connecticut Water informed us a bit ago that they have suspended the non-emergency construction activity, meaning putting the water pipes in Soundview and putting the water pipes in Old Lyme Shores. I think they have finished White Sand Beach, and I think they have finished Oak Ridge. And I don't believe Old Colony is to be done. I think their water is pretty much set. And I believe Miami, they have an antiquated water system, but I think they're speaking to the what used to be the PUC, now Pura, about rafting up with Connecticut Water. But that's a process that we've been peripherally involved in. So, given the urgency of Connecticut Water trying to get this activity done before the end of the year, you do see other companies doing construction, and even in the streets. So they've taken the position they're not doing it. So it may adversely affect their timetable, and that's up to them. I mean, they were the ones wanting to do it quickly, and if they've decided they're not going to do it, then they may go beyond to the end of the year, and they'll have to reconcile with the merger people. So we'll react accordingly. But the construction's been shut down.
And that's because of COVID-19?
Yeah,
Shut down?
I presume so.
Yeah. Okay.
With respect to the sewers, I think the main thing that we can do at this point is the Woodward and Curran engineering agreement. I've given the selectmen a package of the documentation on that, but as we know, we had discussions with the attorneys and everything else, and I think Woodward and Curran has been working with the WPCA for quite some while on the whole idea of the sewers. This, I think they feel that this is a next step in the process to get this engineering services agreement approved. That would enable Woodward and Curran to work with Fuss and O'Neill, who was working with the private beaches and doing work on the common assets, such as the collection pipe, the pump station, force main. They would work in conjunction with that, and they would also be doing the gravity sewer in Soundview. So we have been asked to approve Woodward and Curran as the engineering firm, and we have a price for that, which WPCA has factored into the equation. The DEP was also on the telephone saying that they are in favor of this, and so it would be there would be one of these town clerk would I can read the motion. Be it resolved, it's in the best interest of the town of Oline to enter into contracts with the Department of Environmental Protection. In furtherance of this resolution, Timothy Roseville, first selectman of the town of Oline, is duly authorized to enter into and sign said contracts on behalf of the town of Oline. First selectman is further authorized to provide such additional information and execute such other documents as may be required by the state or federal government in connection with said contracts, and to execute any amendment, rescissions, and revisions hereto. The town clerk is authorized to impress the seal of the town of Oline on any such document, amendment, rescission, and revision. And then the town clerk would certify the resolution, and there'd be a incumbency certificate and so forth. I think we've looked at this fairly thoroughly before, so if you're comfortable with the resolution, we could entertain a motion for it.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Other discussion on it?
Yes. I believe we were considering whether we needed to have a motion first identifying Woodward and Curran as a sole source provider.
The motion first for what?
To approve Woodward and Curran being a sole source provider.
We do have that. Well, we could perhaps amend the motion.
But if we table that and do the other motion first?
All right, I guess we could do that. Why don't we, let's get a motion to table then.
I'll make a motion to table.
Second?
Okay, all in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
All right then. So the question is to have Woodward and Curran considered as a sole source. What I can get the
Provider.
Yeah.
I make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
And in the way of discussion, I think the WPCA chairman, Rick Pendergast, mentioned that to start over again, opening it up would take a tremendous amount of time and very costly. So it makes great sense. And even the DEP folks concurred. So, all in favor of having them so designated?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Then we can go back to the authorizing resolution itself. It's been moved and seconded. Other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, very good, thank you. We had an additional meeting talking about some of the documents, which are still in draft form. So we are getting the details resolved with those, and I expect we should be fairly soon able to bring those documents forward for approval. One of the things is the easement, which would be granted by the town of Old to the 3 beach associations. So the common assets would come across town streets or alleys. And so that would require a town meeting approval, and the difficulty would be to have a town meeting, and I think it would be very difficult to have a kind of a virtual town meeting, because I think it could attract a reasonable crowd. So we'll see how this plays out, but likely we will get these documents agreed to by the group. As I said before, the 3 beaches in the town are talking in a productive way. There's not a lot of bickering, just with the attorney trying to get those documents in final form. So that's coming along. We're not quite there yet. But I think ultimately a town meeting will be required. It would be nice to have a real physical town meeting. If that becomes untenable, we'll have to figure out what to do. But at the moment, we're hoping we will be able to do that. So that's the report there. The next item is the Soundview Sidewalk, the Community Connectivity Grant. And I gather you had a meeting in between, right, Mary Jo?
No, our March meeting was canceled because of everything. So this is the last meeting we had was in February. We're going to have a virtual meeting tomorrow by conference call to get an update.
Okay. Will that be using the WebEx?
Yes, it will be using WebEx from your phone. There's an agenda out, so it was duly posted with the town clerk.
Okay.
So there's a call-in number, and basically the engineer is going to update us on where they are, and of course their office had to be dismantled, and they had to move, work from home too, so they had a delay, but I think that they're all set, and he's interested in touching base with us. I did call the state, of course there's nobody there, to ask them about the length of the grant, if things are delayed with everything, so I've left a message with them. So we'll know more tomorrow, and one of the things that we'll discuss is how we will get community input once the preliminary designs are ready, if we're still in this situation. What's the plan? Also, because I think I told the selectmen they had done the drone flyover, and they run all the data sets. They do have to go on to some of the properties, physically go on some of the properties and do some measurements. They do not have to meet with any of the landowners at this point, so there's no one-on-one interaction there. So there'll be a discussion about that, on how we need to inform landowners. Do we need something in writing from them to give them, the BSC group, permission to do these measurements on their property? And they would like to come up next week. So that's why I thought we better have a conference call soon.
Is there any clarity on the shall we call it the boundary on the north side of 156 to that drone flight and whatever info the state has? Is that clearer as to where that will be?
Are you talking about the transportation center?
Well, the sidewalk which would go from Cross Lane east, do we have a feel for where the sidewalk will go within the state?
I don't have that.
Hopefully that drone helped out. I don't know.
Sure it did. Maybe he'll know that tomorrow on the conference call.
Because I guess with Sound View, Hartford Avenue, there's supposed to be, what, a 5-foot space between the property and the street?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Just so we know the width of things, where we can be. I thought it was about 5 feet on Hartford Avenue. Okay, well, we'll hopefully follow that tomorrow. The Sound View Food Truck Festival. Is Frank on the line? Frank Papalardo?
Yes, I'm here, Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Thank you. Okay. Well, I think since we met, we've seen. I got your memo of Sunday, and then the revised work services agreement, and I guess one of the most important parts, if this whole thing can come together, is the payment and compensation. And I was reading, it says the town agrees to pay the consultant for work performed at a rate not to exceed $3,000, which amount shall be paid before half. That's a little clumsy. June 1 and the balance June 22nd. So I gather what that means is the NEF would need to be paid $1,500 as of June 1st.
As long as the revenues from the truck rentals actually have occurred. So in other words, whatever the truck revenues have actually come in, that's what portion she would get.
Okay, but even though it says not to exceed $3,000, it means that if the event only collects, say, $2,000, that would be the amount. And so everything would be whatever it is. And once it passes 3,000, the fee would be capped at 3,000, and then any additional money would benefit the town.
Correct. The premise would be is that her compensation is based solely on the revenues for trucks on Hartford Avenue.
Yes, and but it's somewhat implied, I guess, but not specifically said. If the revenues do not equal 3,000, but are less than 3,000, that would be the amount that she would receive, no more.
Right. Maybe it could be a little clearer. I think a compensation is based on revenue received from vendor food trucks located on Hartford Avenue. Funds collected in excess of $3,000. So it's not to exceed $3,000. It certainly could be less than $3,000, and it's based solely on the truck revenues collected for trucks on Hartford Avenue.
Now, the trucks which would be placed on Gales Green, which is a separate parcel off Hartford Avenue, would those revenues, I guess they go to the Soundview Beach Association, a non-profit organization, for the benefit, I think it understood it would be for the benefit of the community center?
Right, and the agreement with the truck vendors for Gales Green would be directly with the Soundview Beach Association. So the town wouldn't be collecting the money and have to pay it out. It would be a separate agreement with only those truck vendors on that parcel. So let's say there's 2 trucks or 3 trucks that are in Gales Green. Those trucks, those applications there would be between Soundview Beach Association and the truck vendor. Any trucks on Hartford Avenue would be between the town of Old Lyme and the truck vendor. So any revenues collected from trucks on Hartford Avenue, the checks would be made out to the town of Old Lyme. They would go into the town coffers, and then we would reimburse Barbara based on what we received from the Hartford Avenue trucks. Gales Green, totally separate agreement. Town is not in the mix there at all.
So, Frank, Chris.
Yes, Chris.
I brought this up before. I'm just concerned, are these vendors going to Hartford Avenue first and the spillover going to Gales Green? Or, what's the chance of Gales Green filling up and only one vendor come out on Hartford Avenue?
Oh, the Gales Green is solely for overflow.
Okay, all right.
Hartford Avenue is the primary focus.
Okay.
So is there a criterion that you have that only when gross revenues get to a certain amount that then Gales Green could receive some additional, could get the trucks after that?
Well, it's not a criteria. It's that the street is to be the first. That's where Barbara's focus is on the street. Obviously, Barbara's going to focus on the street because that's where she's going to get paid from.
Right.
She's not receiving any funds at all from any trucks parked on Gales Green.
So logically, what you're saying is that the street revenue should be at least 3,000, or she would be losing money from her perspective.
That's correct. That's correct. That's the way we drew it up, so that her focus and her business standpoint, she's gonna pack Hartford Avenue with as many trucks as we could legally put there, and then if there are additional trucks that want to be part of the event, then they would go on Gales Green.
Okay.
Roughly how many trucks do you think you can fit on Hartford Avenue?
That's a question, and I asked Barbara, and she laid it out, and she said, I think we could put 12 to 15 trucks on Hartford Avenue. And I said, fine, as long as you get everything agreed to with Dave Roberge, and make sure he's comfortable with the safety aspect of it, then we're fine with it.
Okay. And Soundview Beach Association, that's a nonprofit organization.
It's a 501. It's a 501c3,
Okay.
and any funds that would go to support the community center.
All right. Yeah, it's a
I
little.
thought it would be clean. I thought it would be cleaner to do it that way. That way, the town doesn't have to collect money and pay the Soundview Beach Association out of that. I just thought it would be cleaner to have a separate agreement for any trucks that go on to the.
We might have some kind of memorandum of understanding, maybe apart from this, if you don't want to have Barbara involved in it. It'd be clear that the focus, and she'll be a saleswoman getting this stuff done, but just so we're clear that there would be, Gales Green would not receive any trucks until this $3,000 bogey happened, because I suppose...
Or whatever the number is, $2,800, $2,600, whatever the actual number is for trucks parked on Hartford Avenue.
In the spaces allocated.
I could do that in a separate MOU. That's no problem.
Yeah, because it's worded, it's a little unspecific in this thing. Now, I don't know.
It boils down where she's getting paid a commission basically only on the trucks on Harvard Avenue. So,
But
so
I mean,
she's gonna,
all trucks have to come through her, though, right?
that's correct.
The Gale Green people wouldn't be out soliciting trucks on their own and trying to end run
everything
her.
she manages the part of the deal. She manages the entire event.
Okay. Now, maybe you were on the phone when we were talking about some of these naughty problems we're facing.
I've been on the phone. I've been listening in since the beginning.
Yeah, and it well may not let up in a month or two time. I mean, so I guess how does she want to handle the possibility of this not being able to occur because of the COVID-19 stuff?
I did talk to her about that, and in the force majeure clause in our agreement with NET and all the agreements with all the truck vendors that should the event not be able to take place, then they would just get refunded. So. I think what the best thing to do would be, we'll just hold on. We could continue with this project as if it was going to happen and collect the checks from the truck vendors and just hold on to the checks until, sometime the beginning of June. And then if it looks like this is not going to happen, we just send the checks back to the vendors.
Yeah. I could talk
rather than deposit and refund them, just hang on to the checks until we're positive this thing is going to occur. And no one knows. I mean, obviously we're unclear as to what the future is going to hold. In the next several months, as far as social distancing and event, and large events. It could ease up middle of May, or it can continue on through, the end of June, and we don't know. So
yeah, what do you figure would be the fail-safe date at which time a decision would need to be made?
I would say June 1, somewhere, the first week of June.
Well, probably before that, because no later than June 1, because if these checks are sitting somewhere, then you run the risk of truck vendors, they might change their mind, unrelated to whether it's safe or not, so you might have fallout. So a bird in the hand is always better.
Well, I think the next few weeks are going to kind of dictate to us, from a town standpoint, of where we're going to be in terms of social distancing and group gatherings.
Yeah.
And listening to Trump's news conferences every day, and to Lamont's news conferences every day, and it's still not very clear as to when things are going to ease up. Obviously, everybody's got hopes that another couple of weeks, but we don't know. And
right.
And we can pick a date, and I could talk to Barbara, and then I could get back in touch with you, and we can, you and I we can kind of collectively decide what would be the best, trigger date would be.
Okay.
And then I take it from there. Barbara, this is not her first, rodeo. She understands these types of things, and I think it's all pretty fluid at this point. We know it's fluid, and all we can do is kind of work under the premise that things are going to ease up, and if they don't, then we try it again next year.
So the checks are being made out to whom?
The Town of Old Line.
Okay. Well, I wonder if they should be held by the finance department, maybe not processed, but as opposed to kicking around in somebody's briefcase or something.
Yeah, we can certainly. Barbara The reason they're going to get made out to the town of Old Line, but sent to Barbara so she can make sure that people actually are, serious about it. And then we can pick a time, on a Friday afternoon where we could collect up whatever she's received and bring them over, and then we can keep them in your desk, or Nicole can hang on to them.
Yeah.
So for safekeeping, and then take it from there.
I'll talk to her and see what she prefers, because if they're made out to the town, I think they should probably be held by the town. So.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, great. So she's already selling, right?
Great. Yeah, Barbara's been great to work with, so I don't see a problem with that. So.
But she's already selling. Selling the
yes,
deal.
Yes.
Okay.
Selling spaces. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, it would be interesting to see how she's doing, and hopefully it'll be able to be held. That'll be kind of fun. All right,
I think
thank
it'd be
you.
a great event. So I'll touch base with her, just make sure that we're under control, and find out what would be a good trigger date. Get back in touch with you, Tim, and we can take it from there.
Good. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, so we go on to new business. A and B are two items that during the budget negotiations with the Board of Finance, the board approved them, but we have been asked to approve it as the Board of Selectmen. In both cases, these improvements are being shared by Lyme and O-Lyme. They have to do with the Townwoods Park or the Senior Center. Now, the $6,100, which is 5A, is to fund new cameras for the Townwoods Park entrance. And there's been some work performed there in a way of a conduit from the building, but these will be cameras with decent resolution. It will focus on the driveway coming in, and it'll also, the second camera will be focused, I think, up the road toward the senior center. We have had, unfortunately, some incidents where a car has driven on the fields, and there's been some other damage to the field house itself, probably by fairly small people, because the damage is about 3 feet instead of 5 feet. So, but it would hopefully be able to focus on anybody coming into the park at a time when it's not being supervised. I think the way the cameras are motion sensitive, so if when it's after hours, if somehow the gate is left open for some reason, a car goes through, it would trigger the machines to come on. And there was supposed to be pretty good resolution to spot license plates and so forth. The second item is we received a donated generator, and the concrete pad on which the generator will be situated, and that is in the possession of the town. So the $12,500 would be to move the generator to the new pad, to install a buried propane tank, a 1,000-gallon tank, and to hook the thing up to the senior center. And it would be near the kitchen door, out across the sidewalk from the kitchen door for the tank, and the generator would be behind the kitchen toward, facing Townwoods Road. The generator would have a lot of value. It would enable the building to function as an emergency shelter for storms and the like. It also would serve once the new boiler is installed, it would be a gas-operated boiler, so it could power the stove and the boiler and create, provide power to the center at all times. So those two items were approved by the Board of Finance. As you know, the Board of Finance, the town of Oline pays for expenses having to do with the senior center and then back charges the town of Lyme afterward. And having to do with capital items, the ratio was 75% for Oline and 25% for Lyme. Because Lyme does not have this in the budget for this year, but it's important to get the generator installed and even the cameras. We have a building improvement fund which could temporarily fund 100% of these purchases, which are the $6,100 and the $12,500. And once we get to July 1st, then the money in our capital budget could pay our share, and the money in Lyme's budget would pay its share, but that would be as of July 1. So it's to enable this work to be done between now and July 1st, and these items were approved by the Board of Finance, and they're awaiting the Selectmen's approval.
Make a motion to approve $6,100 from the Building Improvement Fund for the Town Woods camera and $12,500 from the Building Improvement Fund for the Senior Center generator tank and hookup board.
Sorry.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is to approve, and I think we do this every year since the bid policy was created. The bid policy identifies certain vendors whose contracts exceed certain thresholds. And a sole source vendor, the Board of Selectmen may approve a sole source vendor for major or regular purchases. Such approval is not required for incidental purchases. And so we have, I didn't count them, but let's see, 2, 4, I think 8 different vendors. And I've given you the list who are more major purchases in the aggregate. And so we are requested to approve the sole source vendors. And the sole source essentially is a vendor that does a unique service, or they sell equipment that would be hard to replicate with other vendors. So the highlighted lists describe, there might be 8 or 9 of them here. I guess maybe you guys remember this from last year. Did you do something like this? No? Oh. Okay. And major purchaser are purchases over $75,000, and regular are between $20,000 and $75,000. Now, some of these vendors provide services all year long, and they're not necessarily major purchases, but in the aggregate they are. And you can see on this list the amounts that were in 2019. So the finance director has asked that we approve the ones that are highlighted.
Make a motion to approve the 8 vendors on the 2019 vendor history bid requirement form received today as sole source vendor.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other discussion on it?
This does not preclude us if something else comes up, like.
I think you're right, yeah. If a new vendor comes as a sole source, we would, such as this would occur in one, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. 5D, approve Sussman Shapiro to represent the town and the Nature Conservancy in a cypre action against the State of Connecticut Attorney General. It sounds menacing, but in actuality, I'll read from the Richard Cody, attorney at law with Sussman Shapiro. This has to do with the recent purchase of the McCulloch property, and on the McCulloch property, there are to be 3 parking areas with some amenities, such as garbage cans and composting toilets, so that visitors have a place to park and go on walking trails that will be created on the property. Because there's an open space, the Nature Conservancy has a conservation easement that was granted by the McCulloch family, and it does not allow parking on the property. So we have to, ironically, file suit, which would be friendly litigation. The town and TNC would need to file suit against the Attorney General to allow for these 3 parking areas to be done. The Nature Conservancy would sign an estoppel agreement to allow the Open Space Commission to start the parking area improvements, basically as a public safety purpose, to get these parking areas and their amenities installed. I think Amanda Blair, who's chairman of the Open Space Commission, has talked with Nature Conservancy, and they are in agreement to having Sussman Shapiro represent them, saves them the trouble of having separate counsel. So we would be approving, the motion would be to approve Sussman Shapiro to represent both the town and the Nature Conservancy. And then the second part of it would be to have this CYPRES, C-Y-P-R-E-S action, naming the Connecticut Attorney General as defendant. The town and the Nature Conservancy would be the plaintiffs, and while it's a friendly suit where there is no objection, technically speaking, there is a conflict between not only the town and the state, which approves the open space easement modifications, but between the town and the Nature Conservancy. And as I said, the Town and Nature Conservancy had agreed to the language of the easement, so there's no practical conflict, but from a professional standpoint for attorneys, there is. So it's a tempest in a teapot just to come up with these parking areas and allow us to use this property the way it was currently intended. So as I say, we would have a motion to approve Sussman Shapiro to be allowed to represent the town and the Nature Conservancy, and then further to have Sussman Shapiro start this friendly litigation against the Attorney General of the State of Connecticut to allow the 3 parking areas and the amenities.
Okay, so I'll try this one. that the Board of Selectmen on April 6, 2020 agree to waive any or all potential conflict of interest with joint legal representation by Sussman and Shapiro for Town of Old Lyme and the Nature Conservancy. Maybe that's enough for one motion, and then we can do the second one. How's that sound?
Okay. So you're making that motion?
I'll make that motion if that sounds
Okay.
right. Okay.
Second. Moved and second. Any other discussion on it? All in favor?
So if I'm clear, the second one, then what you want to have is a motion that allows Sussman and Shapiro to move forward with this action. Is that right?
I think it would be to the estoppel agreement.
Okay.
We have we're approving Sussman Shapiro to represent the town in TNC, and that they would file this Cypre action against the Attorney General. And then there was mention of this for the parking areas and so forth. And then the second thing was the Nature Conservancy we would recommend the Nature Conservancy sign an estoppel agreement to allow the open space to start the Whippoorwill parking area improvements for public safety purposes, is what I got from Rich Cody.
Okay.
I mean, Rich Cody.
Okay. And do you, as the first selectman, have to be do we have to make a motion to authorize you to sign documents also?
I guess we could make that part of the second
Okay.
one. I'm not sure that wasn't specifically mentioned, but likely would be.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll give it another shot here. That the Board of Selectmen on April 6, 2020 authorize the Nature Conservancy to sign the estoppel agreement to allow open space to start the Whippoorwill parking area improvements for public safety purposes. Furthermore, that the Board of Selectmen authorize First Selectman Tim Griswold to sign any related documents.
Yeah.
Sounds fine.
Sign various documents in conjunction with the
I'll second.
transaction. Yeah. All right. Well done. Everybody understand?
Yes.
All in favor? Because you seconded that, right?
Yep. Yes, I did.
Okay, that should, I believe, take care of that. Okay. The next item is employee compensation during the COVID-19. We canvassed a number of towns, and except in the case of a library or two, which the towns own, I think all the towns are compensating the staff during this period when we have the COVID virus, the state of emergency and so forth. So I think the overriding thing is that we're sensitive to certain employees who may have compromised relatives at home that they have to be careful of. So they would elect to work from home simply to minimize any possibility of bringing an infection home. And others who they feel that they can come in at certain times, but then They don't want to be here all day long. And so in all cases, we are forwarding their local telephone exchanges to their cell phone, to their home phone, and they are to be doing their jobs as best can be done. In some cases, they can get on, I guess it's a VPN link with a computer. This is beyond my pay grade. But I guess I know the assessor does this, and she can actually log on to her computer here at Town Hall using this VPN. So I think the finance people, because of the nature of their work, they are coming in, they have their own spaces, so they're pretty isolated. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, a number of people come and go, may not be here all day long. So we're taking a position that people will be compensated notwithstanding these irregular hours, and so people won't have to use comp time or vacation or sick time because they're not physically here. So that's been the posture, and it seems to be working out pretty well. Certain boards and commissions have chosen not to meet, but with the system we're using right now, it certainly is simple. And if you put the information on the agenda and so forth, it works out pretty well. I think some of us have attended Zoom meetings where the computer I have has no camera. So while I saw you guys meeting, I could see you and hear you, but I couldn't communicate back. So it was a one-way street. So we're going to try to get a camera for my thing. But that's pretty neat. And when someone speaks or even coughs, the camera goes to that person and they become the center screen. So you have to be careful what noise you make. But anyway, that is pretty darn nice, and it works pretty well for, I would say, up to maybe 10 people. I suppose if you had 30 or 40 people, all those images have to be around the perimeter of the main screen, I guess. Because each caller has a little box, and if you don't have a camera, it just shows your email address, your name. But this works out quite well. The WebEx device we're doing now. So if boards and commissions wish to meet, and committees, they can do that, and life can go on. But thought it would be fruitful to let people know that the staff is doing their work as best they can, and hopefully if you want to speak to a particular employee, you call their normal number and you should get to them.
But with the boards and commissions, we're not requiring them. If the board chair feels that, it's not necessary, we're going to wait another month or so, we're not forcing the issue, you got to have a meeting, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the zoning and ZBA decided to cancel the April meetings. So if their agenda is light and they don't feel they need to meet, that's their prerogative. I would say if it goes on for another month or so, then I think boards and commissions should probably think about it. We're going to have to work with the Board of Finance to figure out, with the budget hearing, which will be in later April, how we will accomplish that. You gave us something from Essex, and the chairman, Andy Russell, is in charge of a radio station, so he should have some good ideas. But that would be a larger audience perhaps, maybe not, but we would want to make it so that the public could participate. And we would need to designate, you had that resolution which the Board of Selectmen essentially blessed what the governor's done. I don't know whether that's necessary. I guess Essex felt it is, but you'd think if the governor made a decree, I don't know why we would have to also approve it, but I guess it doesn't hurt to approve it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know that we would have to, but it just lays it out in an orderly fashion, really, for the public to show that we're how we plan to run this, that we're not just running around FOI, but there's really a plan for this. I think that was my takeaway from that.
Right. And I spoke to the superintendent of schools, and they are going to follow their same time frame, where they will have a hearing and then they'll have a budget vote in May. They won't have a referendum, obviously, but they will have the vote, and the school board will be doing what our Board of Finance is doing. So that's pretty much it on the employees, and hopefully when we get back to normal, everything will be. Yeah. The last item I have is the Middlesex Health Emergency Department. And looking at the file, back in 2016, I believe it's the paramedic, and the town of Old Lyme agreed to a fee based on per capita, and I guess in the intervening years there have been, it goes for a year at a time, from July to June, and for the last 3 renewals, they make a statement here, and I was trying to see in the materials exactly how it works, which I was not able to do, but it says this would be the 4th amendment, so the 4th time this has been extended a year, and it says, whereas the Middlesex Hospital and the town enter into an agreement dated July 1 of 16 for Middlesex Hospital to continue to provide paramedic services to the residents of the town, and whereas hospital desires to continue providing paramedic services, whereas both parties have agreed to amend the agreement as set forth below, now therefore, it says this agreement is hereby amended as set forth in the following paragraphs. The term of the agreement is renewed for an additional 1-year term, July 1 of 20 to June 30 of 21, in accordance with Section 6 of the agreement. The $1 increase as indicated in Section 1 of the agreement will be waived by Middlesex Hospital to the town for only the renewal term under this 4th Amendment, and all other agreements shall remain in full force and effect. I believe initially the charge, if I can get this, looks to me the town paid, I believe it was, oh gosh, there was a base charge, and then it said extensions would be $1 more per year, and that dollar is what they have been waiving. Now, there was a companion grant application, and it talked about $100 per capita for the town of Old Lyme as determined by the census. So at the time we had 7,603 people, so roughly looks like it would be 76,000 would be the base, and then in the agreement it said it would be $1 more for the next year, so 7,000 more. I didn't have time to check to see in the budget what that number is, but these renewals have waived the additional $1, so it's essentially the same as last year. So the board is being asked to approve the Fourth Amendment, which I read, and then I would sign it and then get it back to the hospital, and they would sign it, and that would take us for another year on the paramedic. That's what I know.
So do you want a motion for that?
Please, yeah. Maybe something
Make a
effective.
motion that
The first selectman sign
signs the
it.
Middlesex Hospital agreement for July 1st, 2020 to July 1st, 2021.
Yeah, the Fourth Amendment.
Fourth Amendment.
All right, moved and seconded that I execute the Fourth Amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Aye. I guess let's see, I guess it's time for public comment. For those of you on the telephone, if there's someone who wishes to have public comment, would you please state your name and make your comment if you wish.
Hi, this is Chris McDermott from the Connecticut Examiner. Am I coming in clearly?
Yes.
Hi, Tim. Hi, all. I hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to check, did you approve the engineering services agreement with Woodward and Curran?
We did.
You did approve that agreement?
Yes. There was an authorization. I read a resolution which will be, the town clerk will ratify it and so forth. And it was the engineering services agreement, and it was an amount of $615,000 and change for the amount for Woodward and Curran to do the engineering services.
And that's in partnership with Fuss and O'Neill?
Fuss and O'Neill is representing the private beaches, not the town of O-Line, although they are working. Fuss and O'Neill is actually doing a lot of work with respect to the common assets, such as the collection pipe, the pump station, and the force main. So Woodward and Curran will interface with that work, but it will also be working on the gravity sewer for Sound View, the actual installation of that. And if you wanted to look at the agreement, we could certainly show it to you.
Okay, I'll probably email for that early tomorrow. And if I can just ask one other small thing, these two capital projects that are done with Lime, what share of that would be Lime's share?
On capital having to do with the senior center or Town Woods Park, they pay 25%, we pay 75%.
Excellent, thank you very much, that's all I have.
Chris, the actual amount for the Woodward and Curran is $615,200.
$115,200. Thank you very much, Tim.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, then, having to do with other business, I did want to talk about the Memorial Day Parade, but we more or less covered that when we were talking about the COVID-19. So I don't think we need to rehash that, but we will need to make a decision on the Memorial Day Parade probably by the end of the month. Yeah, and if we do feel we must close the beaches due to COVID-19, we will need to speak to the private beaches, the two restaurants in Soundview, the merchants on Hartford Avenue, and just generally get the word out. And I would endeavor to get a hold of the president of Miami Beach, because even though access is permitted by the public to the Miami Beach, it is their beach, their property. So I think it would be paramount to speak to the beach president and make sure they're aware and don't have any violent objection. But I can just imagine on a hot, sticky day, they will be coming.
And likewise, the private parking lot owners.
Right, yes.
Or I guess we should call them the permitted parking lot owners.
Right, we'd have to go to them too. Anything else?
No. So bring me safe.
I have one. The executive order 7S that came out, I guess, last week maybe. Or yesterday. It's all running together for me. I guess last week, because T came out after that. Okay. It indicated that by April 25th, the Board of Selectmen shall choose to participate in one or both programs, tax deferment program and an interest rebate program for eligible taxpayers, businesses, nonprofits, and residents. And I think we all got a heads up on that from our town attorney. But that means for our next Board of Selectmen meeting, we need to make a decision on that, which, and just reading it quickly, it just, delays.
What do you know the number of that one? Or
Yes, 7S.
F is in Foxtrot?
7S is in Sam.
Sierra, 7S.
Yeah. I think I have a copy of it. But you have an email from Jack on it, and it gave a very specific date for us to act. 25th.
Okay.
Well, we have our next meeting on the 20th.
Pardon me?
Our next meeting is the 20th, so we put it on the agenda for that.
Right.
Decision.
Right.
See where everything is then by then.
Right. The decision for us is, do we do both or just one of the plans?
Yeah. Okay.
And I think I don't know if either of you were on the Board of Ed meeting today. This evening it was at 6:30 for their hearing. They basically had a WebEx through Zoom and allowing the public in to discuss their budget. So Ian reviewed the budget. He had a slideshow. It went very well. And then basically, he discussed their bottom line, which is, a negative 0.5% from last year. So about 399 and change, or about that for the year. But they, their big drivers were the fact that they have a reduction in the debt service. That's their big driver. And then they had a health insurance reduction in estimated cost. So that allowed them to be negative. So that was a good message. And they also are looking at an increase in students from what they based their estimates on. They're up about 50 students. So that was another good message.
So long as they live in line.
Well, Yeah, Lime does get a decrease of their share. We have a, I guess, smaller increase than what we saw last year, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, at the Board of Finance, we looked at the elements, and pretty much because our grand list went down and because our student count relative to Lime went up, not the latest version, but we went up 287,000, I think, before this last insurance reduction.
Okay.
And Lime went down 136,000. So, when the budget was basically a flat budget, those two things really worked against us. So that's where the Board of Finance was wrestling with how to do things, and they opted to utilize from surplus $800,000 to help the budget. They pointed out that in the past, when they have allocated surplus for the budget, many times it hasn't been necessary to be used, or it has been used in a very limited way. So given the difficulties we might be facing this year, individuals that they may have lost a job or two jobs, with a family, we thought trying to minimize the impact to the taxpayers would be prudent to do this year. When we first heard the numbers, we said, this would be wonderful, because if the schools basically is zero, if you look at the town spending, actually, it's quite modest. But because of the reval, the decrease in the grand list, that changes things a lot. And if one's property went down at a greater rate than the grand list went down, then you'll be in good shape. But if you were above that, or if you had an increase in your property value, it's going to be significant. So we'll see where it comes out when Nicole puts it all through the computer. But it'll be a mill rate increase. But obviously, if your value goes down, the mill rate has to go up. Conversely, if value goes up, then the mill rate goes down. So it's unusual that the grand list goes down, but it did this time. So it's I think the Board of Finance struggled with that.
Yeah, I think to be totally honest, the grand list has been trending down. And which is why we need to seriously look at how we can address that issue, either supporting our businesses, developing different opportunities for people to live in town. We need to take that look at the trends. Hopefully I guess after COVID-19 it'll be anyone's guess, but before this virus, the trend was down. The data is there for us to look at and maybe take some, as a board, some action to try and improve our values of our properties and help our residents, help our businesses.
Yeah, well, that whole EDC, Economic Development Commission work, hopefully they will focus on the whole business spectrum. They became a little focused, I think, a little too much focused on Halls Road. The Halls Road Committee can work on that, but we have Hartford Avenue and the Route 156 down through the beaches. Those are some areas that certainly, if things panned out well, you could turn some of those properties, which frankly are some of them quite blighted, and if they could support some businesses along 156, starting at Mile Creek, that would be a big help for a variety of reasons. we don't have a tremendous amount of business zoned property. We don't have a lot of flat, lovely industrial parkland like Essex has or East Lyme has. So, and a lot of people don't want a lot of development of that sort. But when you think really what's available, Hatchett's Hill Road, as you come in from 4 Mile River, that's very difficult land to deal with, to put a commercial building in there. It's rocky and it's hilly and the lots are not very, very easy to work with. So we'll see, but we have areas that could be upgraded, and maybe that could get us some more immediate attention if, like a Cherry Stones or the gas station and some of that stuff, if that could repurpose and be vibrant, productive, that would be great.
Okay, great. And then lastly,
Any more?
I have one more.
All right.
Do you have any feedback on our negotiations with our police?
Not recently. I talked with the attorney, and he was trying to speak with the labor attorney, and so we need to blow the dust off that, because that is something that we can work on. And I know there have been a couple letters back and forth, but we have an idea of some of the issues that the police officers are thinking about, and we hopefully could narrow it down and keep it focused on a few important things and not get too many items. And I think the attorney said, try to keep it very specific, because if you want to change some wording to make it clearer, then that often is perceived as a proposal, and then the union might want something in return for clarity, and so we have to be careful what we ask for. But obviously, compensation will be a big one, and then we need to have some thoughts as to what we really think would be important for us to have as proposals. So, best case, it would happen fairly quickly, but you never know.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing more, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
9:23.
All right, and it's looks like 9:23. All right, well, thank you very much, and everyone stay safe out there.
All in favor?
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, take care.
Hi. Can I ask somebody a quick question?
What's that?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, Patty.
On the motion for the, on this approval for Sussman Shapiro to represent the town, on the second motion, where the Board of Selectmen was authorizing the Nature Conservatory to sign, what are they signing?
Estoppel agreement, ESTOPPEL.
ESP